Hi all. Okay, so we're going to get into some specific points about learning to play the classical guitar now. We should be able to skim through these fairly quickly. You know, it really just comes down to a few things. Okay, so set up a guitar practice area, you know, out of the high traffic area in your house. You know, if you're trying to practice in the living room, people walking around talking to you, it just doesn't work. Set up a practice area that you can shut the door and lock it where people can't bother you while you practice. You know, at least a 4x4 area so you have room to move around. Try to get a padded chair. Try to get a mid-level guitar. You know, don't start out real cheap, but I don't recommend going too expensive either. It's nice to have a guitar stand so you can leave your guitar out. Nothing wrong with putting it in the case. You know, we'll talk more about these things later on. Get a good music stand. I have pictures down below. You'll need a footstool. I have pictures down below. Get a good light. You know, when you play off sheet music, you can't be sitting there in the dark. You got to have a good light so you don't strain your eyes. Preferably a 3-way light, but that's your personal preference. You know, a small table would be nice. You could put your drink on it. You know, your books, your miscellaneous stuff. You know. Once you get into practicing more, and you're practicing for hours, it's nice to have a small TV there that kind of breaks up the monotony. You can have the TV on while you're practicing, and maybe even a DVD player where you can buy instructional DVDs and play the instructional DVDs on your television. These days a lot of stuff is on the computer and YouTube, so it might not even be a bad idea to have like an older laptop on your table where if you're studying something to do with music, you can look it up on the internet real quick. You don't have to run down to the other room to turn on the computer and check something out on the internet. You've got another one right there on your table. You know, you can get good laptops now used on the internet for $100. This here is probably the most important thing. This is why I say lock the door. Avoid distractions. A 10-second distraction puts your thoughts back 20 minutes. A 10-second distraction puts your thoughts back 20 minutes. So your phone rings, your girlfriend texts you, you know, just say, hey, from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, I'm going to be practicing, don't bother me. Okay? This is why I say we should be able to skim through the rest of this pretty quickly. It's just basic points, expanding on things that we've already touched on. You know, get a nice padded chair. If you're going to be sitting there for a couple hours, you know, you can't be doing it on a hard wooden chair. You know, it just won't work. You know, you can get these. I picked up one of these at Sam Clubs for like $19. Yeah. No arms, because when you're holding the guitar, the arms could get in the way. You know, short back. You don't need a high back chair. A high back chair might be nice for your desk because then you can rest your head, right? But I think for just sitting down and practicing the guitar, it's really not necessary. So this is a nice chair on Amazon for $31, free shipping. You have to be careful. You have to be careful how the legs are. You know, nothing with rounded corners here, because it's real easy to tip forward or backward in those. You know, so just 4 standard legs. Okay, a nice heavy duty music stand. Don't get one of those flimsy ones that are just like a couple little spokes. You know, you bump it, all your books go flying on the floor. Usually once you get into this stuff, you're going to have 4 or 5 books at least on your music stand that you're flipping through. You know, all your sheet music. So it's nice to have a heavy duty music stand. And you can see this one here, it's even got like a little tray right in here where you can put your stuff. You can put your tuner, your picks, and whatever else you have laying around. That's why it's nice to have the table too. You can throw stuff on the table. It's nice to have these legs down here close to the floor because then you aren't tripping on them. Some of them have legs. It's like a big triangle that come off the top here. You'll need some type of footstool. That's like the main thing the classical guitar players do. These are real cheap, 12 bucks, you know. You can use a couple books if you want to, you know, make a small one out of 2x4s or something. These are nice, but they always fall over. You know, they're kind of a pain. You're constantly bending over trying to pick it up, you know. If you don't mind working with some 2x4s, you know, you can go to Home Depot. They can cut up the wood for you. Then all you have to do is screw it together, you know, or even nail it together. Maybe I'll do a video on how to make one. You can buy wooden ones, you know, nicely varnished, nice designs, but you're talking 60, 70 bucks. So for now, you know, a couple pieces of 2x4 and a piece of wood would be fine. You know. But most people just use these. You know. A nice guitar stand so you can leave your guitar out. You know, lots of people like to put it in the box, take it out, put it in the box. You know, if it's in the box, it's protected. You don't have to worry about the kids and the dog knocking it on the floor. But if you can, it's nice to leave it out because then you're more apt to practice. You get a few extra minutes, you can sit down and practice for a couple minutes. You know. That's why I say buy a cheaper guitar so you can leave it out. You know, if you buy a $5,000 guitar, you're going to always want to put it in the box. You know. So, okay. There's all types of stands now that they're coming out with these. I don't have any experience with these, but that, you know, it looks nice, but you know, if you just barely bump it, it's gonna fall. At least with these, your neck goes in here, you put this strap around here, it kind of holds it in place. So this style is definitely sharp. But I know I'm in kind of a tight fitting spot here and I constantly bump mine. You know, if it wasn't for this thing, they'd constantly hit the floor. So there are guitar stands where, see, like here you can hang 3 guitars on this one. So if you have electric guitar, a steel string guitar, and now you're thinking about getting into classical guitar, they do have stands that you can put 3 guitars on. It just saves floor space. They really come in handy. So you can see here there's multiple choices. You can have a double stand, a single stand, here's a triple stand. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the guitar itself. The classic nylon string guitar. You want to buy an acoustic box guitar with nylon strings. somewhere around $200. Not too cheap. Real cheap guitars are difficult to play. But if you buy a cheaper guitar, you won't mind leaving it out. You don't have to worry about somebody bumping it and knocking it on the floor. You can take it, throw it in the car, and go to lessons. Leave it in the trunk or leave it in the back seat. You don't have to worry about it. You don't need an electric guitar. You don't need an amp. You don't need to buy no cords. You can learn classical guitar on an electric solid body guitar if you want to. There's no problem with that. It may be a little harder to finger down by the where you would normally pick, but this hand up here would be a lot easier to finger on the thin strings and things like that. If you have like a regular steel string guitar, you can learn classical guitar on that too. Learn the finger pick. It'll be a little harder because of just the strings. They're harder to press down, and it's harder to move around down with your pick hand, but you can do it. A nylon string guitar, they're just real easy to press down. They're nice and big down here. You can get your fingers in there. Okay, so a medium quality guitar, so it's easy to finger on the fretboard up here. Real cheap guitars are very hard to finger on the fretboard. So I've seen some guitars, the strings are like a half inch off the fretboard. Of course, whoever tried to learn on that guitar, of course they quit. It's just impossible to play. It's like trying to cut bread with a butter knife. You can do it, but it's going to be real hard. And you're going to mash the bread, and it's just going to turn out terrible. It's nice to have a hard case to put your guitar in. The hard case protects it. Bags, usually if you buy a guitar these days, they'll throw in a bag, or they'll say you should buy a bag for $15. Bags are better than nothing, but it would be better to have a hard shell case, especially if you're going to travel, go back and forth to lessons. There's a hard shell case, and then there's like a semi-hard. It's like a hard cardboard, but if you set something real hard on it, it'll still smush down. So if you can afford it and you are looking at real expensive guitars, be real careful of knockoffs, fakes, especially with the classical guitar. They try to fake them and then sell them on the internet. You think you're buying a $10,000 guitar, and really it's a $100 piece of junk that somebody faked. Okay. There's different sizes. There's a full size guitar. There's a 3/4 size guitar. There's a half size guitar. A half size would be like for a 5-year-old just getting started. A 3/4 size might be like for a 7 or 8-year-old. Full size, like 12-year-old and up, should be fine. Each person is different. So if you walk into a store, you can spot the nylon string guitars because they're tied on down here at the bottom. See how the strings are tied on? See, a steel string guitar, the strings are held on with these little pegs. They stick the string down in a hole and then shove this thing down inside the hole, and that holds the string on down here. You want this type here where they're tied on down here at the bottom. This would be a real nice one to get started with. You know, can't beat Fender. Fender is like the main name in guitars. There's like a handful of names that are really popular, but Fender is like the #1 name. Fender and Gibson. Those are the two main names. So this one's nice. Let's see it. Rosewood fretboard. That means this wood here is rosewood. $249 and free shipping. I mean, you can't beat that. So, and I'm sure it sounds fine, especially to get started. Yamaha also makes a nice classical guitar. This one's $139, but I haven't seen it in person, but just by looking at the pictures here, that looks real nice for $139. Yeah. If you get it and it's too hard to finger, just send it back. Amazon will take it back. Or even call a few stores and see if they have one in stock that you could go check out. So, Cordoba, that's one of the better names in classical guitars. I think they're mainly classical guitars. So this would be a nice one to start with for $199. Beautiful guitar. I'm actually looking at a used Cordoba at a small music store about 30 miles away from me. I think he wants $699 for it, but I was trying to get him to come down on it. I know it's been sitting there for a few years in the shop, so maybe in the spring I'll take a run up there and see if it's still there. Here's just a picture of a 3/4 size one. You can see it looks just like a regular guitar. It's just shorter for a smaller person. There are left-hand guitars. Basically, the strings are just on backwards. You know. Some things would have to be different. You know, this little piece of plastic here has to be the other way around. You know, the slits have to be bigger on one side, smaller on the other side. But in general, left-handed guitars cost more, mainly because they aren't as common. It's not fair, but that's the way they do it. Lots of left-handed people play right-handed because, you know, they'll go over their friend's house. Their friend has a right-hand guitar. They sit down and play it. You know, that's just how they started to play. So they just kind of stick with it. So you just have to figure out which way you want to learn to play. You know, a lot of famous people played left hand, so that shouldn't be a problem. This thing here, that's what they call a cutaway, and that's so you can play down here a lot easier. See, like on these, if you wanted to play down here, it's kind of harder to get your hand down in there. So that's a personal preference if you want to get that type. I think they're pretty sweet, you know. But in general, I think most classical guitar players would go with this style. But that's your personal preference. I've seen some very big names in the classical guitar world play on guitars that are cutaway. Here I wrote, if you're gonna play music down there a lot, it would probably be a good idea because you have less chance of getting carpal tunnel. Trying to squeeze your fingers into doing weird things. Less stress on your wrist. Right now you might not be thinking about it, but after 20, 30 years of playing, you start to worry about those things. I had an older piano teacher, a female. She was 82 and she had a carpal tunnel operation, and she actually had like a little skin graft. Don't remember if it was on top or on the bottom, but where they had went inside there and did the operation, and then they put a skin graft on top of it, and it just looked like a little square piece of skin that they just kind of stuck on top. So that's why anything you can do now to take the stress off your fingers and your wrist will pay off in the long run. There are classical guitars that are electric, and you can usually spot them because on the top here they'll have the controls. That's the volume control and the tone control. So I think in general, for classical guitar players, I think they are traditionally avoided, but personally I think they're great. They sound beautiful. I almost bought one a few years ago on eBay, but I couldn't get the store to come down on it. Mainly because it's kind of hard to get some volume off these things. But if it's an electric guitar, you plug that into an amp, you can get some volume from it. So